The water is still. Early morning light settles over a wide harbor, broken only by the slow movement of anchored ships. Steel hulls rest quietly beneath the mountains of Oahu. Sailors move through routine checks. Engines are cold. Guns are unmanned. It is Sunday, December 7th, 1941, 06 duck hours. No alarms have sounded. No enemy has been reported within thousands of kilometers. The Pacific appears calm, almost indifferent. Then, just before 08 Zets, the first aircraft appear over the northern horizon. Low, fast, unidentified. Within minutes, the silence ends. By late 1941, the Pacific War had not yet begun, but the conditions for conflict had already been set in motion. The Empire of Japan, after years of expansion across East Asia, faced growing resistance from the United States, Britain, and the Netherlands. In July 1941, the United States imposed a series of economic sanctions on Japan. Oil exports were cut off. Steel and other critical materials were restricted. For Japan, which imported over 80% of its oil, the situation created a strategic deadline measured in months, not years. Japanese leadership faced a narrowing set of options. Either withdraw from occupied territories in China and Southeast Asia, or secure new resource zones by force. The decision, finalized in the autumn of 1941, was to move south toward the Dutch East Indies, British Malaya, and the Philippines. But one obstacle remained. The United States Pacific Fleet, based at Pearl Harbor, represented a direct threat to any Japanese expansion. If left intact, it could interfere with operations across the Western Pacific. Japanese planners concluded that the fleet had to be neutralized, quickly, decisively, and without warning. The operation was assigned to the Imperial Japanese Navy. Under Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, it would be a preemptive strike, designed to buy time for Japanese expansion. The target was Pearl Harbor. The scale of the operation was unprecedented in naval aviation history at that time. 6 aircraft carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, were assembled into a single strike force. Together, they carried over 350 aircraft, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, high-level bombers, and fighter escorts. The strike force departed from northern Japan in late November 1941, navigating across the North Pacific under strict radio silence. The route avoided major shipping lanes and remained largely undetected. Each aircraft had a defined target set. Battleships were prioritized, followed by airfields and support infrastructure. The objective was not occupation, but temporary destruction. The shell distance from launch point to target exceeded 400 kilometers. Pilots were briefed in detail, using scaled maps and mock-ups of Pearl Harbor constructed in Japan. Torpedoes were modified with wooden fins to operate effectively in the shallow waters of the harbor, which averaged less than 12 meters in depth. Timing was critical. The attack was scheduled for early morning, when ships would be in harbor and aircraft would likely be on the ground. Sunday was selected deliberately, anticipating reduced readiness levels. At Sodosik Maoakawuni, the first wave of 183 aircraft was launched. A second wave of 171 aircraft followed shortly after. The operation moved forward without detection. At EU 755, the first bombs fell. The initial targets were American airfields, Wheeler Field, Hickam Field, and Ford Island. Aircraft lined up on runways were destroyed in clusters. Many had been parked close together to prevent sabotage, a precaution that now increased their vulnerability. Within minutes, torpedo bombers entered Pearl Harbor. Flying low over the water, they released modified torpedoes against anchored battleships. Once, USS Oklahoma was struck multiple times and began to capsize. The USS West Virginia suffered heavy damage and settled into the harbor floor. The USS California was hit and slowly sank at its moorings. At 0806, a high-altitude bomb penetrated the deck of the USS Arizona. It detonated in the forward ammunition magazine. The explosion destroyed the ship almost instantly, killing over 1,100 crew members. Thick black smoke rose above the harbor. Fire spread across decks and into surrounding waters coated with burning. Fuel. The second wave arrived at approximately 8:40. It focused on remaining ships, dry docks, and additional airfields. Anti-aircraft defenses began to respond more effectively, but coordination remained limited. The attack lasted approximately 90 minutes. By 09:45, the Japanese aircraft had withdrawn. The planning of the attack reflected a high degree of coordination between naval aviation, intelligence, and engineering. Pilots were trained specifically for low-altitude torpedo runs and precision bombing. Intelligence reports had mapped the positions of major ships within the harbor. Weather conditions were monitored closely to ensure clear visibility. However, the operation also contained critical omissions. No third wave was launched. Key infrastructure, oil storage facilities, submarine bases, and repair yards remained largely intact. These assets would later play a significant role in sustaining American operations in the Pacific. Additionally, American aircraft carriers, USS Enterprise, USS Lexington, and USS Saratoga, were not present in the harbor at the time of the attack. Their absence would have long-term consequences. From a logistical perspective, the Japanese strike force operated at the limits of its range. Fuel reserves were carefully calculated. Any extended engagement or additional wave risked exposing the fleet to counterattack or detection. The decision to withdraw after 2 waves reflected both caution and uncertainty about American response. Capabilities. Despite the tactical success of the attack, several limitations became apparent in post-war analysis. The destruction of battleships, while significant, did not eliminate the United States Navy's operational capacity. Many damaged ships were later salvaged and returned to service. The failure to destroy fuel reserves allowed Pearl Harbor to remain a viable base. Approximately 4.5 million barrels of oil stored on the island were left untouched. Repair facilities, including dry docks and workshops, were also spared. This enabled rapid recovery operations in the weeks and months following the attack. From a strategic perspective, the attack did not achieve long-term paralysis of American naval power. Instead, it shifted the focus of naval warfare toward aircraft carriers, which remained largely unaffected. The attack also had unintended consequences. Rather than weakening American resolve, it unified public opinion in favor of war. On December 8, 1941, the United States declared war on Japan. Germany and Italy declared war on the United States shortly thereafter, expanding the conflict into a global war involving all major industrial powers. The attack on Pearl Harbor was detected too late to prevent its execution. Radar operators at Opana Point identified incoming aircraft at approximately 07:02. The signal was misinterpreted as a group of expected American bombers arriving from the mainland. Initial reports of explosions were treated as isolated incidents until the scale of the attack became clear. After the attack, investigations were conducted by multiple agencies, including the U.S. Navy, Army, and later congressional committees. These inquiries examined failures in intelligence sharing, communication, and readiness. British and Soviet observers analyzed the attack as well, recognizing both its effectiveness and its limitations. The use of carrier-based aviation against a major naval base was studied extensively. For the Allies, the attack served as a case study in both surprise and vulnerability. Defensive measures at other bases were revised accordingly in the immediate aftermath of the war. The damaged ships at Pearl Harbor were assessed for salvage or disposal. Several battleships, including the USS West Virginia and USS California, were repaired and returned to service. Others, like the USS Arizona and USS Yanista, Oklahoma, were deemed beyond recovery. The USS Arizona remains at the harbor, its hull still resting on the seabed. It was not removed due to both practical constraints and its status as a mass grave. Wreckage was cleared, facilities were restored, and Pearl Harbor continued to function as a major naval base throughout the war. Economic considerations influenced decisions regarding salvage. Materials were reused where possible, reflecting the broader industrial demands of wartime production. Historians continue to evaluate the strategic implications of the attack. In operational terms, it demonstrated the effectiveness of carrier-based air power and the vulnerability of concentrated naval assets. In strategic terms, it highlighted the risks of underestimating industrial capacity and national mobilization. The United States, once engaged, expanded its military production to levels that exceeded all initial projections. The attack also influenced post-war military doctrine. Emphasis shifted toward dispersal of forces, early warning systems, and integrated air defense. During the Cold War, the lessons of Pearl Harbor informed planning for potential surprise attacks. including nuclear scenarios. The event remains a reference point in discussions of preemptive strikes, intelligence failures, and strategic miscalculation. The harbor is quiet again. The water moves slowly around the remains of ships that never left their moorings that morning. Metal structures, once part of a fleet, lie beneath the surface. Names are still attached to those places. Dates are recorded. Numbers are preserved. December 7th, 1941. The attack lasted less than 2 hours. Its consequences extended across 4 years of global war and beyond. The light returns each morning to the same harbor. The silence for a moment remains.